everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny. This is another Kenny and Renny After Dark edition. After a game that I had a bit of an awakening here, folks. You know me. These games where the Winnipeg Jets don't get a lot of shots, don't possess the puck very much, find ways to come out, win those games, pop up with the skill every once in a while. I've been very critical of those games. I've been doing it since the start of this show. And, you know, I just got thinking about the last show, and I know that I'm on the other side of the audience on a lot of these things. So I got thinking about it, and I think you guys won me over. I was watching that game and I started to think to myself, I think I finally I've joined the hive mind. I've melded with everybody out there. If you watch Rick and Morty, I'm part of Unity now. I'm of the hive mind thinking I finally got it. Why take shots when you can just, you know, pop up with some skill every once in a while and score? Why possess the puck for much of the game, right? Because then the other team's just going to come and check you, right? Then you have to work when they check you. So why do that? Just let them have it. Let them have the puck over there. Your goalie will take care of that. They'll bail you out. Why go score 5-on-5? Why try and outwork and be the better team at 5-on-5 when you're going to get some power play chances and pop it into the back of the net? And regardless, why worry about it when you've got a travel schedule, right? They're on the road, and this is back to back. You know what I mean? And it's a different time zone, right? And someone told me that the barometric pressure in the arena was not ideal on this night here tonight. There's a lot of reasons you can take a look, and if the Jets don't win a game like this, there's reasons for that you can point to and you can lean on. You can lean into those kind of things, right? But what I saw here tonight was, a Jets team that only got four shots in the first period, and I think they had a total of 8 after 2. But we've said this time and time again. Good teams find ways to win games. And the Winnipeg Jets found a way to not show up in the first 2 periods. Why play 3 full periods when you only have to play 1, right? But the Winnipeg Jets found a way to come out, and despite getting outshot and outpossessed and outchanced and all those different kind of things, they came out and they were up 2-1. Good teams find ways to win games, and the Winnipeg Jets found a way to win that game until the Ducks went out and found a way to win that game. But I'm with everybody now. I'm sold that this is what you do. You save your energy, you save your shots, you pop up with some skill every once in a while. You don't need to play all 3 periods. You can just play 1. And in the end, I mean, so they don't win this game, because that's not what it's all about, right? Like, there's no one here who was talking about that game last night who would have come in here and thought that this was a bad game compared to last night's, based on just the idea that they got 2 points last night and didn't get 2 points tonight. That would be silly, wouldn't it? Right? If you took a game like last night, which is the exact same game as tonight, and you celebrated last night's game, and you come in here and you're going to criticize this game here tonight, that would be silly, right? Because it's the same game. The only difference is the 2 points, right? No one would do that, would they? Either way, I'm on your side now. I've joined one of us. This is, I have not been able to appreciate the masterpiece that was hockey, where you just allow the other team to kind of take the game and just sneak in with a couple plays, steal that game out from underneath them, and walk away with the win. I know it didn't result in the 2 points tonight, but if you like that brand of hockey, you kind of have to like it whether they win or lose, don't you? That's what I would think. That's the thing that makes sense. Regardless, I'm with you all, folks. I'm on your side now. This is the way. Sleepwalk your way from right now all the way to the Cup final, because I'm going to tell you right now, I covered the Cup final last year, and that's what Stanley Cup final hockey definitely looks like. You know, one team just 4 shots a period here or there, jump up, a little bit of skill here, a little bit of skill there. This is the path. Forget everything I've said in the past about the Jets' defensive structure and all those things, the Rick Bowness blueprint. Crumple it up in a ball, throw it out. This is the blueprint, folks. Follow this. It's going to take you where it needs to take you. That's my take on this whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business for his take on the whole thing. Here comes Kenny, folks. Kenny, your boy here, let's see if I can find it. Kenny's water bottle says Renny's sarcastic takes versus Renny's usual takes. It's the same take. I don't know what he's talking about here. I couldn't have been more serious in my opening than I was. I'm on board. I'm converted. I've seen the light. I'm here. I only wish I looked better doing it, not wearing, a loser's t-shirt, Dallas Cowboys t-shirt, one of the habits I haven't been able to stamp out in my life, but I'm trying to dress it up a little bit like this, but nothing like I would be doing if I were dressing up in my Vittorio Rossi gear. And you know what you need to do? Head on down to Corden Avenue, walk into Vittorio Rossi, tell them Kenny and Renny sent you, ask for Frankie and the boys. They'll do you up right. They can make anything look good, even, a kind of bit of a sour taste in your mouth kind of loss like the Winnipeg Jets had here tonight. Ken, take it away. What'd you see in this game here tonight?
Yeah, I saw some concerning play from the Winnipeg Jets, certainly through 40 minutes. Like you said, it's sort of a doubling down and doubling down, if you will, Sean, and not the kind of doubling down that a team is looking for, I would say. Again, better third period, but then a couple of really costly issues. And again, it's a long marathon season. There's going to be hiccups, but this is kind of one of those hiccups that's going to maybe sting a little bit. And honestly, Sean, I mean, my story is being posted right now, and there was some rewriting required. That game certainly took a turn and got turned on its head, but sort of got turned on its head kind of back to how it started. My lead of the story is the Jets kind of got what they deserved. And again, some people will be upset with that, but quite frankly, this is the kind of game, Sean, I mean, to your point earlier on the open, this is the kind of game that the Jets need to lose in order to kind of clean up some of the bad habits that have been creeping into their game. And I honestly believe that, and people will, they can criticize my sunny disposition and demeanor, but I mean, it's a fact. If the Jets win that game, it's one of those situations where, it should sting, as Tracy O says. Yes, it should sting. And if you get away with it in a game like that, maybe you're not standing at attention when the Minnesota Wild walk into Canada Life Center on the weekend and try to close the gap in the Central Division standings. So I would say that it's I'm not going to say a necessary wake-up call would be an exaggeration, Sean, but I would say that it's important that the Jets kind of get some things cleaned up here. So again, some things to build on. They had a strong third period for, let's say, 16 minutes or so. But I would say that is a tough defeat. And again, that is something that should sting. And we'll see how much it stings when the Jets get ready on Saturday, because the team that they're playing, I didn't see the final, Sean, but it wasn't looking good for the Wild after 2 periods against the Florida Panthers. So they're going to be pretty sour coming into this game as well, and they don't want to get swept. Sean, last year the Minnesota Wild were swept, I think, by the Winnipeg Jets in the season series. So they certainly don't want to have that distinction 2 years in a row. So I would say the Jets, I would expect them to be a little bit sharper come Saturday, but that won't take away from some of the errors that were made in critical times today. And also too, I mean, it would just absolutely terrible first period. And this is the one thing that I would say too, if you're looking for things that are signs that the Jets aren't what they have been previously, um, look at some of the quotes post game. Nikolai Ehlers absolutely, throwing both barrels at himself, which is normal. But Gabe Vilardi saying, quite frankly, it was a terrible first period. That's good. That self assessment is important, because the Jets they've raised their standard, and today they were nowhere close to their standard for the majority of the game. And when you don't get close to your standard, you should be disappointing, and you should be disappointed in yourself. And as Nikolai Ehlers pointed out, they let their goalie down. They let their goalie down in a scenario where it just isn't right. And Nikolai Ehlers did point that out. Tracy Comrie deserves better. Comrie, again, he played well enough to win. Again,
Yes.
no run support, and you can't blame him on the game-winning goal. This is I know that Scott O'Neill kind of bristled at the question, but I mean, this was a D to D simple play. Hayden Fleury goes D to D to Neil Pionk, and Frank Vetrano pokes the puck off his stick. Like, puck management is critical in the last minute of a hockey game. Nobody will feel worse than Neil Pionk about what happened. But I mean, that's a play that, that play can't be made in that scenario. Yes, it happens. It's a long season, everything else, and no one will feel worse than Neil Pionk. And I would expect him to, bounce back against the Minnesota Wild. I mean, but that's a tough ending for a team that really battled. And again, it's not just one play that ends the game. The Jets didn't they lost a defensive zone faceoff. What's the scouting report on the Ducks? I mean, they score redirection goals. So what do they do today? 2 redirection goals. So Jets had to do a better job. They haven't, that's one area that they're working on cleaning up. They didn't clean it up today. They need to do a better job keeping the front of the net clear and doing a better job of getting on sticks when those shots are getting through from the point.
Just wanted to throw this out here just for the perfect timing that we got of Tracy when you were talking about Comrie deserving better, and she basically threw that out at that time. And then Bardot saying, Renny, welcome to our happy place. We all chose the red pill based on my opening. These are both red hot takes. Tracy and Bardot, Bridget, get out of my hot tub in the backyard. You guys are red hot with those takes, and we all know there's no such thing as a cold take in an Arctic Spa hot tub, especially one like mine that's got the Spa Boy package. So if you want to melt away those cold takes, the kind of thoughts that there was any difference between this game and the game against the San Jose Sharks, if you need to melt that kind of stuff away, go see my guy Dustin down at Arctic Spas, and he'll set you up with a hot tub that does everything just shy of Kenny's hot tub time machine. I mean, I'll unglue my tongue from my cheek in this situation here. And I will say this, like the interesting part of that, and I mean, you can self-assess this at home, but how many of you were dying on the hill that game yesterday against the San Jose Sharks was, a great game. And now you're showing up thinking that this is a bad game. These are carbon copy games. It's just a puck ends up getting deflected and gets into the back of the net. Did the Jets push a little bit more in the third period of the last game? Yeah, they had to, because they were trailing in that game. But to me, this is 6 extremely. Well, sorry, that's not true, because it's 2 games back to back that are extremely consistent. Fairly no shows in the first 2 periods. Some opportunistic scoring on the power play, which is kind of bailing them out. And Waiters nails it here. Jets didn't get shots because they didn't have the puck. That's been the case for a long time when they're not getting the puck. Like I said, they're just going into a defensive shell. But I mean, honestly, if your only reason for not liking this game versus liking the last game is that the Jets came away with the 2 points, I think you're missing what the Jets should be trying to do here. And getting 4 shots in the first period, 8 shots total after the second period against the Anaheim Ducks, a team that you could see when the Jets started pushing are rife with errors. I mean, even the over pursuit that you see on the Scheifele goal, right?
Sorry,
like it's they have numbers back. It's a 3-on-3, and what do? They all overload to the one side and leave Mark Scheifele wide open, and then it's in the back of the net. Like that's poor. You wouldn't see the Jets doing that. That's poor management. That's poor defense. Once they started pushing the Anaheim Ducks, this is one of those games where the Jets could have, if they got out and started pushing, could have won this one like 6-2 or something like that, right? Could have stolen the hope away from that team, because when they did start pushing, that team doesn't react very good when they're on their heels. But the Winnipeg Jets just didn't seem to have any interest in putting them on their heels on this night. I don't know what else to say about this. To me, this is, am I surprised that it happened this way? I mean, it felt like the exact same game. I had the same number of texts from the same amount of people who were saying, why aren't we getting, a lot of them who disagreed with me in the last show and thought I had like a terrible take on that San Jose game, and then turned around and are questioning me, why are the Jets getting caved in the beginning? Well, they got caved in last game. They got away with it last game. They're trying to get away with it here tonight. I would say, Ken, the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, a lot of people are saying it should go to the Winnipeg Jets. It probably should, but I'm going to give the Pristine Roofing wake-up call to anyone out there listening to this podcast who thought that game against San Jose was some kind of banner game that the Winnipeg Jets pulled out, or thought that it was an okay brand of hockey to play, because what you saw was the exact same thing here tonight with just the polar opposite result. The Jets got away with it in San Jose. They didn't get away with it here tonight. That's the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, and you know what that means. Time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place to check up on all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. And you can also give Pristine Roofing a call directly at 204-237-7663. Ken, let's dig into a little bit to that play by Neil Pionk. I want you to dig into it a little bit more. And I'm going to do it with the caveat that I honestly think that if the roles were reversed, we would be praising whoever played the role of Frank Vetrano and turned over that puck. We would be saying, great forecheck. This is Winnipeg Jets hockey, blah, blah, blah. Hey, you force people to make mistakes, right? Like, in the end, I don't want to take anything away from the Anaheim Ducks here. But you take me through it, because you had said, D-to-D play. You thought that this was fairly, I don't want to say paint by numbers, but I'm not going to put
a routine play. I mean, it's a routine play for me. Initially, I thought, maybe the bobble was forced by the puck being in the skates of Pionk. I thought that the pass by Fleury was actually, it was in the right spot. And Vetrano kind of, I think, Sean, I mean, how I see it, and I watched it again just before the show went on, he just kind of catches Neil by surprise. And I wouldn't say it's nonchalance, because Neil Pionk is not a nonchalant guy. But in that situation, you can't afford to have the puck knocked off of your stick there. So for me, I mean, that's maybe, could you say that maybe the play could have happened a little bit faster? Sure. And could the support have been a little bit better? Yeah, I guess. But I mean, that's just a play that has to be made. I mean, you work on D-to-D plays all the time. I mean, you don't have the pressure of it being a tie game and there's someone on you. But I think that's just a play that can't be made in that scenario. I mean, the Jets have their best defensive line on the ice, and they've relied on Neil Pionk to play heavy minutes and in those situations. And that's just it's a play that it's a tough play. I mean, again, I'm not blaming Pionk for the loss by any stretch. The Jets were not good enough for the majority of the hockey game, but that's a play that Neil Pionk will be disappointed about. Just like I would say Neil was very disappointed that he left Tyler Toffoli alone in the slot yesterday. I mean, mistakes are going to happen, and he's the kind of guy that will not like what happened in the last two nights on those two particular plays. But again, could there have been better support on the play? Absolutely, yes. It was a breakdown, and then all of a sudden, I mean, Sean, the Ducks don't score, but you know who does score for the Ducks? Troy Terry. So you better mark Troy Terry when you're in the last 30 seconds of a hockey game. Whether you make the D-to-D play or not, that player has to be covered. I mean, he cannot have the puck alone on his stick and be in a position to end the hockey game there, even if you feel like you're going to have, a D-to-D that goes either D-to-D middle or D-to-D up the wall. So I don't think the Jets played it particularly well, but yeah, I mean, that's a play that's got to be made a little more, with a little bit more urgency in that kind of a game. Because Sean, if you're in that scenario, you have no business being in the lead to begin with, and then tied with 4 minutes, just under 5 minutes to go. Then in the last 30 seconds, you have to do everything in your power to get at least a single point out of that. Sean, that would go down if that game gets to overtime and the Jets lose. That's clearly in the point gained versus point lost territory. Instead, it's 2 points lost, even though, like I said, they probably get what they deserved in terms of their effort overall and their execution and everything else. But you kind of feel like, if you're the Jets, you feel like you left one on the table there. And in some ways, you could get greedy and say you felt like you left two on the table because you had the lead with 5 minutes to go.
The one thing that I'll say about that play is okay. And Ken, I'm going to ask you to judge my take on this one. Embarrass me if you need to. But the outlet pass that Neil Pionk is trying to make, like, this play came as a real surprise to me, right? Vetrano comes out of nowhere, and good players have the ability to do this. They kind of hide their distance from you, and I think it's kind of one of these like kind of coiled cobra things, right?
Oh yeah,
you think that you're out of the range of the cobra because it's all coiled up, and when it springs, all of a sudden there's a lot more to it. And I kind of think from the body positioning of Vetrano, he's kind of shoulders back, and then all of a sudden he lunges forward, and he's a little bit closer than Neil Pionk thinks. The outlet pass that he's trying to make, who's he trying to make that pass to? Is that Adam Lowry? Is that Mason Appleton?
I think you're going D to D middle there in that situation. I think is the safest play because Vetrano comes from the left wing boards. He has sealed the pass off to Appleton for me.
Yes.
So I think they're going D to D middle. Lowry is in the middle. He is the button hook support. Niederreiter is on the left wing boards closest to the front of the net. So for me, I think it's Lowry in the button hook is what you're trying to hit there.
Right.
And I agree with you completely. I think Vetrano, Neil Pionk thought he had more time. That's the one thing I should have put as an emphasis on the play. Neil thought he had more time, and he didn't have any time.
Yes, and I'm trying to get to the bones of it's Vetrano's positioning, which he pulls that off, right? Good play by a good hockey player, right? The other part of that, though, is because of his posture, and he doesn't look like a danger. To me, the outlet pass to Lowry looks a little lax to me as well. Like what it looks like on the ice sometimes, Ken, if you and I are out there and I've got the puck and I need to get it to you to get out of the zone, I'm sure you've been in this position before where you go to move a puck and it's almost like the player doesn't look overly ready for it. Do you know what I'm saying? So if you need to get an outlet to me and I don't have the position of my stick on the ice, making eye contact with you and being like, I'm here, Ken, get me the puck. Sometimes if I'm a little lax, it can make you think I've got a little more time that I have as well. I'm not trying to excuse Neil Pionk. He's got the puck on his stick. It's his responsibility to get it through. But I'm telling you right now, I think that Adam Lowry is just as surprised as Neil Pionk is that Vetrano finds a way to get to that puck. Basically, when you turn over the puck like that, everyone's going to be caught in a poor defensive position. But I'm not ready to say, and hey, this play is still 90% on Neil Pionk's stick, but the casualness with which I think the Jets were playing at that point is kind of them. I would suggest the way they played that game catching up with them. I feel like they didn't show up for the beginning of the game. They said, all right, we know what to do. We do it all the time. Here we come in the third, take over the game. We're going to win this one. And I think, Ken, half of them were thinking about what they were going to talk with their moms on the flight home. Half of them were thinking about their post-game meal. And then all of a sudden the goal's in the back of the net. But you know what? This is pretty routine for the Winnipeg Jets. We pull these things out all the time anyways. We go to overtime. We always win win these things in overtime, except for that one time that Vegas won the game. I just think that this caught up with them mentally, the kind of physical play, the lack of physical play, the lack of push that we're seeing from this team caught up with them on the mind. It happens to be on the stick of Neil Pionk. When it happens to be maybe the worst player on the ice to be trying to check him. And that's how it goes. But I'm not going to say the Winnipeg Jets were let down by Neil Pionk in this situation. The Winnipeg Jets as a whole, outside of their crease, let themselves down on this night. Although I should couch, I thought Josh Morrissey had a really, really good game here tonight. But I just wanted to make sure that Neil Pionk is going to be beating himself up. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people have been making it out to be. It's a bad play. It's not him just turning over and laying a pizza to someone in the middle of the slot and then one time getting the back of the net.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, it's just something that, the cleanup is easy to identify, and it's something that the Jets, like Sean, this is what you talked about all year long, right? The Jets get to their game quicker, and right now there has been a little bit of erosion in their game in terms of their structure and just the kind of mistakes that are being made. It's not that the Jets are, they're not getting bombarded all the time, even though, 24-8 wasn't good. But again, it wasn't crazy zone time, but they needed to be way better. Let's just put it that way. But there's just been a little bit of subtle erosion in that when you don't build it up with sand, then you get down to the foundation, right? I mean, that's the deal. But again, these are mistakes that can be fixed, and that's the job of the Jets to get fixing, I think, is what I would say. Again, like they have a higher level that they can reach, and they're going to need to elevate. They have 2 games left before the break against very good opponents. The Jets are 5-2-1 now in their last 8. So, they've shown some signs, but now if they want to go into the break on a high note, they're going to have to play at a higher level. Let's just put it that way.
So you touched on that about a little bit of erosion of their play. Love this question by T. Konapoli, or this statement, and I think it's a good one that we can jump off from and have a bit of a conversation. But T. Konapoli, a very recent TCB Lamplighter winner, and deservedly so, says the 15-1 start was a mirage. It's more the real team the last 15. I think it's fair to say, Ken, that nobody, I don't care how dominant you are, no one is a 15-1 team, right? So it's fair to say that the Winnipeg Jets are not that team that started the season. The circumstances lined up again. I think it was, of their first 13 games, 11 of them were against below the playoff line type competition, right? But I don't want to make excuses, but that role that the Winnipeg Jets was on was not going to be sustainable. No team is that good. Go to the best teams in the history of the NHL, and none of them are that good and that consistent and continue with that kind of play. So no doubt the Winnipeg Jets, I don't know if that's a mirage, but definitely the Winnipeg Jets could not be that team at the beginning of it. But do you think that what we've seen since, because now if you take that first 16 games out of it, the Winnipeg Jets, since that first 16 game start, are back to being a sub 500 hockey team since? Do you think their last, I think it's 18 games that they've played since that first 16 stretch start, which is sub 500 hockey, is this closer to what the Winnipeg Jets are than that red hot start that we saw at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, not for me. I mean, I'm not dismissing the theory by T. Konapoli. I mean, I'm saying the same thing I said at the time. The Jets are somewhere in the middle. They're in the middle of those 2 teams. They're not 15-1, and they're not as bad as they've been at times of late. So, but the beauty for them is that, we talked about this yesterday, and Hustler got on me a little bit for, the reason we're talking about playoffs is because the playoffs are when the Jets are going to ultimately be judged. So, they have 48 games left in the season, and they've got lots of time to get things sorted out. But, we're not going to ignore some of the signs. I mean, I understand why people like T. Konapoli are saying that it may have been a mirage. For me, I think it's something somewhere in the middle. I think that they're a team that, again, I've said it this way. I think they have some elite level qualities, but a lot of things have to be going well for them in order for them to be an elite team all the time. So um, there you go. Running man. What's the Jets record after Sandberg's injury? I mean, the Jets record is not as good without Sandberg, and they definitely miss him. I mean, his value
huge.
is incredibly high. I mean, it's something we talked about at the time when he was playing well and he was in the lineup, and since he's been gone, that that it's not a coincidence that some of the structural issues are happening when he's not there. That the penalty kills started incredibly well, Sean. They were top 5 team at one point, top 10 for sure. The fact that he's been out and they haven't been able to fill his minutes with as much success is not a surprise. That is a compliment to how Dylan Sandberg was playing. So for me, they're somewhere in the middle, Sean. I mean, do you think that they're closer to the sub 500 team? I mean, for me, they're in the middle. They're still a very good hockey team, but they have work to do. And again, we talked about this again. Sean, today is another classic example. And people can say whatever they want about the top line. And was it their best game? No, but the goal that Mark Scheifele scores, it's a incredible effort by Kyle Connor. People want him to back check. Well, guess what? He doesn't have the end-to-end rush if he doesn't have the back check that precedes it, right? I mean, this all started with a great back check. Then he goes end-to-end. Then he pushes back a young defenseman. And that's why Mark Scheifele is open for a one-time blast. Because he has to, Jackson Lacombe has to respect that Kyle Connor might go past him wide. Instead, he kind of does a stop and go, creates the lane, makes a great pass. But again, the Jets aren't getting enough offense from the other lines. And if they're not getting it from the other lines, they've got to get it from the defense. Chris, Jets fan, need more goal scoring. Yes, this is what I'm saying. The Jets aren't getting enough offense throughout the course of the lineup. And that's one of the reasons we were praising them for their depth at the start of the year when they were a 15-1 team. Right now, that depth has gone a little bit quiet in a lot of ways. And again, getting Nikolai Ehlers back is going to help them a great deal. Sorry, I'll turn it back over to you. Do you see them being
let's
closer
just
to
roll
sub
on.
5?
I'm gonna touch on that point just quickly, and then I'll go back to that. But I mean, someone sent me this, and someone sent me a time to break up the third line text. Ken,
it wasn't from me, buddy. It wasn't from me, buddy.
I wondered though if you texted them and said, "Okay, send it to Renny now." I wondered if you did that.
Check the receipts. No,
I had said, like, let's give it some time. For Nikolai Ehlers is the straw that stirs the drink on that second line, a second line that I'm fully back and thinking is going to need some work and some tinkering when they're heading into the playoffs. I think you're going to see similar ads like you did with Sean Monahan last year, but give it some time. Nikolai Ehlers was an absolute force at the beginning of the year. There were a couple times tonight, Ken, you had said this, you'd made this point. It takes Nikolai Ehlers a little bit of time to get the engine revving as high as it can go once he comes back from injuries. He's usually typically been a little bit slow coming off of injury. So give it a little bit of time before we can see that. And I think if you start creating a second line, that's a little bit more danger that the opposition has to start focusing on a little bit more, then that's just going to open up things for the third line to like. The one thing that we're looking at here is the Jets are surviving through this stretch because they're not allowing a lot of goals, and they're not allowing a lot of goals because of the way that they deploy that third line and the fourth line. Like they're a hard team to score against. Tonight wasn't a good example of that, but even that San Jose Sharks game that I talked about, which I was not a fan of the way the Winnipeg Jets played in that game, I was a fan of their kind of fallback defense that they played in that game. And I think that the third line is a big part of that. They're also a big part of that, getting the grind going and kind of turning the game in their direction. So this to me is, and someone touched on Sandberg. I've said it earlier. I said it on CJOB radio today. I think Dylan Sandberg is the most challenging injury the Winnipeg Jets have had in the last 3 years. That's how important, that's how much of a keystone, a linchpin I think he is to this team. That's one thing. But Nick Ehlers is the linchpin and the key to the offense on that second line. Once he gets that going, I think things fall into place a little bit more, and you'll see offense start to rise. The Jets need to add that 5-on-5 because right now, Ken, I will tell you this. the Winnipeg Jets surviving off their power play sounds really good, right? Here's the problem with it when you're going into the playoffs is you are playing a team that is now extremely dedicated to understanding your power play and how to shut it down, okay? The way the NHL works is a new team comes in every night and you got to figure out what they do. And you may think, and sure, there's people who are paid to figure this out, but you can only teach a team so many times when a new team comes in how to shut down that power play. But if you're the Winnipeg Jets and you think that how they're playing now is going to work in the playoffs, where you really lose every night the 5-on-5 battle, but you keep pulling out games with your power play, it's not going to happen. Maybe it'll happen for a round. Maybe it'll happen to 2. I don't think it would, but maybe it will happen for 3. But you're not going to cruise through the playoffs and lose the 5-on-5 battle and win your way to the Stanley Cup by just winning on the power play over and over again, because the opposition has a 7-game series to figure out how to shut it down. You won't get that advantage in that manner. So the Jets need to get back to 5-on-5. I'll go back to what we're talking. The interesting part, Ken, if you're talking about the last 18 games, I'm a big believer. The interesting part about it, the Jets being below 500 in their last 18 games, I think that's a flattering record for them. Like, I can think back to games, the last one that I saw against the San Jose Sharks, most definitely the one that we saw against the Minnesota Wild. I don't think this was, I think this was in the first 16 games. Was the Colorado game in the first 16 games?
Pretty sure it was.
Yeah, I think
November,
it was. So
yeah.
I can't use that one, but that's a game. Like the Winnipeg Jets, in my mind, have won 3, 4, maybe 5 games this year already that I think that they did not deserve to win. This would have been 6. This would have been another one of those, right? And while that's really cool to be that, the fan of that team who watches, and boy, they stole another one. How much fun is that? I just don't think that happens in the playoffs. I can only think of a couple games in the playoffs last year where a team stole a game from the opposition. So the thing about the Jets right now is their record is flattering. So in a way, I want to say the Winnipeg Jets should be happy where they are right now. But I'll tell you this right now, if the Jets had lost a lot of these games that I don't think that they were the better team in, but they somehow came away with those points, their record would be pretty putrid over these last 18 games. And I don't think reflective of what the team is. So I think the team is better than a 500 team easily, clearly. But right now, the way that they seem to be leaning into and having way too many of these no-show nights. When I can name a whole bunch of games, I can name Colorado, I can name Vegas, I can name Minnesota, I can name I thought that Buffalo game was an example of that. I can name San Jose, and I can name tonight. When I'm starting to name like a quarter of the season or a fifth of the season are games that I'm looking at the Jets and I'm thinking they didn't show up, but somehow found a way to win 5 of those or so. That is not a good trend. I don't think. It's why I dislike these kind of games, or the one against San Jose the most, because most people seem to think the Winnipeg Jets walk out of it and they got the 2 points and everything's okay and we should celebrate, and bad teams beat good teams too, and they just beat the Washington Capitals. Does that mean the Capitals are a bad team? No, that's not what we're saying. What we are saying is it's not good to get into a habit of being a team that no shows in games. And by the time I've seen 7 games or so of the Winnipeg Jets no showing, winning a lot of them, that's getting into habit territory. If 20% of your games are games that you are no showing, that's a habit. That's beyond an off night here, an off night there. It's beyond the excuses you want to have with travel and all these different kind of things. It's a habit. It's a playing style that the Winnipeg Jets are falling into. And as long as they play that style, I would suggest their record is more indicative of who they are in the last 18 games if they continue to play that style versus what they were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'm not being dismissive here. I mean, I'm just going to go back quickly. I mean, you and I talked about this briefly. I mean, when I talked with Brad Marchand about the Bruins' great start in their historic season, he felt that they needed a little more adversity over the course of the 82 games, and it probably would have helped them in that series against Florida. So again, long way to go before game 82 or game 83. But Brad himself, who knows a little bit about winning and disappointment, is someone who thinks that maybe the Jets going through this might help them over the long term. So again, time will tell and we'll see. But again, they need fewer no-shows and more structurally sound games in order to make believers out of a lot of people.
I'm not sure where you want to go with this. I think I did want to point this out. Just give me a second. Elias McCracken here, I think, is trying to own me on this, where he says, weird, we're still in first place in the entire NHL, right? This is like pointing at the score clock when you were up 15-3 and now the score is 15-14. That's my take on this kind of attitude here, right? Like, yeah, you're first in the NHL. At one point, you were in a position where it looked near impossible to catch you, and now there's teams that, by virtue of point percentage, are ahead of the Winnipeg Jets. So I don't think this is the own that Elias McCracken thinks that it is. Ken, let's go to Kyle Connor though, and just the execution of this player in crucial moments. We can be upset with how the Winnipeg Jets did not push as much as we thought that they could in this game. We can be upset about how they blew that game. But one thing that we are seeing right now is execution wise, there's a reason the Winnipeg Jets just keep popping up and scoring goals, because if you give an inch to Mark Scheifele, to Gabe Vilardi, and to Kyle Connor right now, it's in the back of your net.
Yeah, and I mean, it just, like I said, the play that he makes is exceptional. And again, it all starts from backtracking and a back check. And the fact that he actually went end to end after it is just we never talk about, Kyle's VO2 or his ability to, that was a long shift. He had a huge burst to get back, and then he had a huge burst to start the play. And then the pass that he makes is absolutely perfect. And talked about this yesterday. I mean, Mark Scheifele adding the one-timer piece to his arsenal has been a massive development among his 18 goals. I mean, he's been banging them home with regularity here this year, and a lot of those are coming on great passes. And I mean, Gabe Vilardi is a guy who we talked about going into the year, and I mean, another goal for Vilardi. I think that's 14 now, and 6 are on the power play. Kyle has 8 power play goals, but we often overlook his passing and vision because he's such a good shooter, and he's got such a great release, as we saw in the goal against Georgiev last night. So, but again, the most important development for Kyle Connor is that he's doing the things that he did in the first round of the playoffs, which was show that back pressure and the back checking. I think for Kyle, we talked so much about what it's going to mean for Mark Scheifele if he had made Team Canada and maybe he gets added. But for me, I think Kyle Connor having the opportunity to play best on best and being around some great leaders on Team USA, I think that's something that will help him when he comes back for the stretch drive for the Jets and gets ready for another playoff situation. So yeah, I'm impressed by how he's played. And again, I understand some people don't like the Corsi 4 percentage for that line, or they don't like the scoring chances, but man, tell me a line that's been better than them when the game has been on the line. I mean, yes, have there been some quiet nights for that line at times? Sure, that's going to happen, but I'm having a hard time finding, a trio of guys on this Jets team that have delivered more in big moments than the 3 guys that we've been talking about.
Yeah, well, and a great stat on the broadcast tonight about the highest scoring lines in the league.
How do you like that?
And them being second in the NHL behind only that Point and Hagel. No, it's yeah. Was it Kucherov and Hagel? Kucherov, Gensel, and Hagel. Is that who it was? Or was Point in there? I don't know. Regardless, it's one of the Tampa Bay lines, and the line, the Oilers line, was in third place. So, I mean, listen, if the Winnipeg Jets top line is not playing like this, they're not winning the
Point Gensel Hagel. Right? Sorry, my bad. It was Point Gensel Hagel.
Yeah.
I had it right.
I had it right.
Good job.
Well did done. That was me. But again, the Winnipeg Jets as a team are not winning the way that they're winning a lot of these games, if not for that line, right? And clearly their power play is back and doing that all over again. But I mean, that's the one thing that you have to take away from this. Although their last power play seemed to be, that was the one where I thought, okay, this is over, right? When Josh Morrissey just kind of takes over that shift. Okay, let me just do a quick little rant on Josh Morrissey here before we go too far. I thought he was phenomenal on this night. I think that he's got this really, okay, you know how the third line goes out and it kind of changes the complexion of the game as a unit that goes out and grinds, takes the puck, gets it down low, churns, punishes, does all those kind of things. It's like this three-man force. The one thing that I find interesting, because you'll see it with that top line as well, they'll go out and they'll start to churn often. It's in the back of the net. We just talked about that line as a value. Josh Morrissey has the ability to do that all by himself. The way that he forces turnovers from the opposition, a lot of times the team will turn over, or get the puck from the Jets and start exiting the zone. And Josh Morrissey just won't let them, and he'll take it away from them, and he'll take it away from them controlled. And then he'll just be part of the Jets kind of doing that churn where he's playing like half the role when he does that. I saw that a bunch of times tonight, and what you saw, I thought tonight in that penalty that he drew, that really, if that power play, again, I said that the posture of the Winnipeg Jets to me was a team that was already on the bus heading to the airport on the way home. I think that power play was already on the bus to the airport heading that way home. But if they weren't, and they score, that game is over. And that game is over because Josh Morrissey has just frustrated his opposition to the point tonight that when he gets the puck, they can't get it off of him. And they know that when he starts doing that, it's going to lead to one of these really long, tough shifts. So he just gets mugged in that situation there. Josh Morrissey, to me, doing everything that you could be asking from him to do on this night. I have the Jets' top two players on this night as Eric Comrie, and then second, I've got Josh Morrissey. After that, I need that top line to pop up more often than they were, right? Like, it's nice to flash. And again, I think it's one of the reasons why the Jets have played as lackadaisical as they are, because they're getting away with the idea that we get a power play, it's in the back of the net, we can win the game that way. We get a mistake on the opposition, Kyle's going to find Mark, or Mark's going to find Kyle, or one of them is going to find Gabe. It's in the back of the net. They've been living off that. They need to get a little bit more consistent there as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. But I mean, I would also, like I said, my counter is that they need more from some of the other lines to get moving here. And I loved, we've seen this from Nikolai Ehlers since he's been in the league. Again, I think that most people's ears perked up when Scott O'Neill's answer to a question about Nikolai Ehlers' return was he looked like he had a little bit of rust. And then I went back and listened to what Ehlers had to say, and that's exactly what he said. So again, some people are thinking, oh, wow, in this day of not criticizing or potentially sounding, somewhat critical, Nikolai Ehlers had already called himself out. So this wasn't a coach, attacking a player. And Scott O'Neill isn't the kind of coach that attacks players anyway. All I'm saying is that he said a fact. I mean, Ehlers had a couple flashy moments, but he also, by his own recognition, said he needed to be better in a lot of areas. So, I just think that that's something that Ehlers has done a lot of, and I think that the Jets need him back, and they need him back at his peak. And when he gets to his peak, then the Jets are a much more dangerous team when those guys are rolling. And yeah, I mean, that's sort of my not rebuttal, but I mean, I'm augmenting what you're saying by saying the Jets, that line's carried them a lot lately. They need a little bit more from
no doubt.
The second line
doubt
specifically.
No doubt.
And again, we've seen lots of signs from Cole Perfetti, but those guys need to get a little bit more moving at 5-on-5, I believe.
It would pay off. If they could get going and take some of the heat off, it would pay off for the Winnipeg Jets if they could get that offense going. And hey, if you are looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt-free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. And hey, I just wanted to say the fine folks at the Cambrian Credit Union reached out to us and wanted to pass along their holiday greetings to the K&R audience. Unbelievable gratitude. They wanted us to pass this great graphic along and just say, we talk about the if you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, that we implore you to appreciate our sponsors, Cambrian, making it clear to us that they feel that you have done that. So we do appreciate that you've shown them the appreciation, and they wanted to show you their appreciation with the Happy Holidays card that they wanted us to pass along. We'll be able to show it off to you one last time. Two more games before Christmas here.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And how about, while we're at that, speaking of appreciation, if you have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of our fine community.
I don't know how it's possible, but Sweet Lou had 14 shots in the first period of that game today. So chew on that. Time for us to get rolling here, Ken. What do you got for the Johnson Group Got You Covered play of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I know that he has been the lightning rod of our chat room here even today, I think. But Logan Stanley had a pretty important blocked shot in the third period when the game was, I think, when the Jets were still protecting a lead. So I'm going to go with that, even though I'm ducking as the folks in the chat room maybe throwing some vehement language my way.
I'm trying to shield you. I wish it was one of those things where I did this and hands came out of your window and shielded you from that. Very brave.
Let's just say there weren't a lot of candidates today from how the Jets played. Very outside brave. Of, again, when we've gone with the blanket statement for Eric Comrie before, and we could have put him in here, but again, in a game where the Jets were trying to protect a lead, Logan Stanley was out on the ice and he had an important shot block.
There was a near Johnson Group Got You Covered play of the game from Nino Niederreiter, who almost had the stick lift to stop that goal from going. The one thing that I'll say about this, that if I'm showing the video afterwards, it sucks for the Jets that happened. It sucks that the puck got turned over. This isn't one of these things though where you catch like a shot on the ice of the guy scoring the winning goal and a Jet player just kind of standing there passively watching. Like, the mistake is made. The response to that mistake is right. Now, they don't get to it, but if I'm a coach, I'm taking a look at Nino Niederreiter in that situation, and I'm saying, you tried, you were engaged, you responded to a turned over puck. As long as guys are engaged, they're going to get to that play more often than not. So that is the near Got You Covered play of the game, brought to you by the Kenny and Renny OGs, the fine folks at the Johnson Group. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that brings us to Kenneth, the TCB lamplighter of the game. What do you got?
Oh, it's got to be the GWG in this one. I mean, like I said, I loved everything about the Kyle Connor play to Mark Scheifele. But in terms of lesson learning and, things that the Jets don't want to be repeatable goals, I think it has to be the Troy Terry game winner in the final minute. Obviously, for highlight reel purposes, it would be the one-timer by Scheifele. But again, in this situation, I'm not trying to play the heel. I just think that it's a play that the Jets can learn from, and it's something that they don't want to happen again. So I'm going to go with the Troy Terry game winner with 26 seconds left as the lamplighter here. I'll say this: the Jets' first power play goal. I know that Kevin Sawyer was joking a little bit about it and joking that Nikolai Ehlers was going to say, "Well, I purposely did that." I think that he did. That's not what he said. No, hang on. No, he said it after the game. Let me read. Sorry, you go and then I'll read.
No. Well, okay, I want to see if what I thought I saw lined up because I haven't read the quote. But to me, what Nikolai Ehlers is doing is he's shooting shooting it kind of to the inside of his leg, hoping that he can knock it down, right? And you can see that the response by Gabe Vilardi is very much expecting that. Like, he's not caught off guard by this. It looks to me like he's trying to basically make a body pass so that it hits Gabe Vilardi and drops down in front of him. And if he does so, then he's got the puck alone in front of that. That's what I thought I was seeing there. Is that what Nick says happened?
No, this is what Nikolai said.
All right,
That was not a
blew it.
pass. That was not a pass. It wasn't a shot. I don't know what that was, but he's pretty good around the net, and he was able to get that puck and put it in the back of the net. So
Subconsciously, he was doing it.
Ehlers dismissive of your theory. I apologize.
I've got faith that his subconscious took over. See, he said, I don't even know. It's like one of those times, Ken, you shoot the puck and it goes off the bar and in, and someone's like, did you see it open? And you're like, I don't know. I just turned and I shot, right? To me, sometimes the brain takes over. The subconscious of Nick Ehlers is smarter than the conscious of Nick Ehlers in this situation, or at least that's what I'm going to go with, because it helps me in my cause. It helps me with my TCB lamplighter. But in the end, I don't know why I'm fighting so hard, because it doesn't matter what my lamplighter is. It matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag TCB lamplighter. You're automatically entered to win a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, you know what to do. Head on down to their tap room at 11290 Kenniston. Go down there. They've got all different kind of beers, lots of great Christmas beers right now that won't be around for too much longer. So make sure you go check them out. And of course, you can check out their December special pizza and all their other great pizzas and food down there. Great place to sneak in for the holidays. And that brings us to our winner. And holy smokes, I'll tell you this, he was hot about that. He was actually hot. Usually he's hot about the Winnipeg Jets getting a bad call. He was hot about the call against the Anaheim Ducks tonight. Pat Rathwell, who used to break up fights that Renny was on the ice back in the old South Interleague Hockey League days. Pat Rathwell is our winner of the TCB Lamplighter. So you know what to do. Pat, direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me your email. I will send you a voucher for a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TCB. It is the nectar of the gods, and that brings us to our keg save of the game. Ken, what do you got?
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to ignore Eric Comrie here, but I'm going to have to give him the honorable mention for his save on Pavel Mintyukov. It has to be the poke check by Dostal on Gabe Vilardi. To me, it's a game saver. I know Waiters said earlier he didn't even get a shot off. Well, the reason why he didn't get a shot off was because Dostal makes a great play. He reads the fact that Vilardi wants to go backhand shelf, and he poke checks him. That's why he didn't get a shot off. To me, that's got to be the keg save of the game.
Is it not completely and totally ridiculous and a failure that they allowed that 2-on-1
of course
as easily as they did? I mean, that was terrible.
To your point, though, it was a great pass by Morrissey, but there is no way, even on a 6-on-5, that Gabe Vilardi can get behind the defense. You can't.
I don't care how nice the pass is. The fact that you left one man back in a situation like that was just like, I don't know how that happens. I couldn't imagine that happening, Ken, in a Pee-wee hockey game. That there was the opportunity to come back in the game, and I think, like you'd said, Dostal making that poke check. Maybe it doesn't go down as a save. It was the most important goaltending play of the game, which makes it good enough for me for the keg save of the game. But in the end, it doesn't matter what I think matters. What you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate, usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And our winner from the last show, that would be Scoots McScoots. Scoots, you know what to do. Direct message me. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate, usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Ken, I don't know. I guess now that we've got our business out of the way, but did you end up checking out the Andrew Ladd and
I listened
Blake
to
Wheeler
the
documentary?
First 40 minutes or so of it.
Yeah, okay. I'll just do really, really quickly here.
Cole's
I don't want to get too deep into it. Cole's notes. I thought it was interesting in that Blake Wheeler had essentially said what Paul Maurice always said about him. He talked about himself as being a leader, and his idea basically was, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this, you follow, right? And to a degree, I can understand why he thought like that, because that's what, hey, whenever someone would come in and ask about him as a leader, Paul Maurice would always say, I would just bring in new players and I just say, you just look at that guy right there. You do what that guy does, you'll be okay. I've said this in the past. If the Winnipeg Jets won the Stanley Cup this year, you would have to give credit to Blake Wheeler, even though he's not here, because I think he's had a major, major effect. That kind of singular focus and internal drive to kind of be the best player that you can be, I thought was Blake Wheeler's superpower. I think he taught guys like Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, even Connor Hellebuck to kind of follow that road. And those players are the players they are and have basically become the best versions of themselves based on what you would have thought they would become from the draft. I mean, seeing Strome in this game here tonight, Ken, reminded me that he went to what 2-3 picks before Mark Scheifele and was supposed to be
the Islanders,
supposed to be a far higher blue chip prospect than Mark Scheifele was, and boy, that hasn't aged very well over the career of Strome. The one thing that I would suggest about it there, now it's an interview done with a guy that he's paid to do work, to learn leadership from, right? So there's a little bit of like, it's not an independent journalist who's asking these questions. It's a guy who's saying, hey, all that stuff that I taught you, let's talk about it and let's go in that direction. So your self-reflection is going to go kind of where they've taught each other to go with their self-reflection. They did this was the part that I thought was interesting, is they kind of, Andrew Ladd talked about how mad he was that Blake had the C stripped from him. And Blake talked about he'd been working on his leadership, and then they didn't get to, the guy who was interviewing him, who'd been his coach, his leadership coach, they were so upset that he didn't get to employ all these new leadership things that he learned heading into that season. And so to me, I felt like it was three guys kind of talking about the Jets. It felt a little bit, they never said this out loud, maybe it's just me determining it. It felt like they felt that the Jets had let Blake Wheeler down in this situation. They were really, really proud of Blake on how he'd gone and he'd handled that situation throughout the year. Now, one thing I will say, I said this afterwards, I interviewed Blake, sat down one-on-one with him after he had the C stripped. He handled that with as much nobility and aplomb and self kind of respect and restraint as I could have imagined someone doing it. I'll say this. The way that season plays out, the things that we heard happen behind the scenes as the team kind of, crumbled down the stretch. And then we all remember Bones coming out and saying his thing. And I always described it, and I do not back down from my description of this, but the players coming out seemingly led by Blake Wheeler, pledging their allegiance to Blake Wheeler afterwards and kind of calling out their head coach. I said, it felt to me like Blake Wheeler led a mutiny against Rick Bowness on his way out. And I said it on this podcast, Ken, that was a fitting end to Blake Wheeler's time in Winnipeg, that he would lead a mutiny against his coach on the way out the door. He still needed to be, it's been told to me from people within the organization, in order for them to move on, they needed to move Blake out. So I found it kind of interesting that they were talking about like all the work he'd done and how well he handled that leadership wise, that he didn't want to like burn everything down there. This is still a team that bought him out and moved him along to try and get past him. And what I would have liked to have heard was, well, if the leadership went so well that year, how did you find yourself in a position where you were calling out your head coach on the way out the door and being moved out because the organization felt you needed to be moved out for them to get past you?
Yeah, I mean, Blake's got a complicated legacy here. There's no doubt about that. I would say too, I mean, my biggest takeaway was that he spoke about anxiety. I mean, I think it's interesting because you saw how wound up that Blake was and how short he was with the media. And again, we know he's a wired guy, but I'm not sure the conversations would have been all that different. He said, if you talked to me an hour later, it would have been different. I'm not sure about that.
Exactly. Well, practice days, there was still that edge, right? Like you can say it happened coming off of a game. there was no difference to me between Blake Wheeler coming out of a game and coming out of a casual practice or a morning skate or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I just would say this. I mean, I just think that at a time when we spent a lot of time talking about mental health and anxiety and things like that in the last couple of years. I mean, good for Blake to speak out a little bit, but at the same time, we would have no idea that Blake was having panic attacks. So I mean, that was a bit of a revelation for me. But yeah, I mean, again, it's a safe space where he was speaking in. He's talking with one of his best friends in the game, Andrew Ladd, and a guy that he worked with. So again, it's taken at face value. And again, the fact that Blake had an epiphany, I mean, I think the Jets might argue that they wish that Blake had the epiphany earlier, maybe, right? I mean, that would be the other part of the equation. But I mean, Blake did a lot of good for the organization. And again, there's certain things that I think that with the benefit of hindsight, he would like to maybe have done a few things differently for sure. But again, there will be, I've said this from the beginning. I think that as complicated as his legacy might be, he did a lot in this community, and I'll be surprised if they don't put his number up in the Ring of Honor at some point. Yeah. And there was, to this point, there was no more productive player than the back-to-back. Kyle Connor has since eclipsed the 91 points, I guess, right? He had the 94 points, but at one point, Blake was one of the best right wingers in the National Hockey League. So, credit where credit is due, but at the same time, like I said, it's a complicated legacy, and I think it will always be one. But at some point, I think that the two sides will come together and they will celebrate his time here.
They would be crazy not to do that. He was the best player. I still don't think there's maybe Connor Hellebuck. I don't think there's been a better 2.0 Winnipeg Jet though at their peak than Blake Wheeler. He was absolutely dominant. I've said this again, if the Winnipeg Jets do win a Stanley Cup with the core that they have now, they will owe part of that to Wheeler. I also think they could not have got there if they didn't move on from Blake Wheeler, right? So there's something that he brought that they could use, but also something that he brought that held him back. The last thing that I will say is he made some kind of comment about, like how wired he was. And I had a conversation with Blake one time after I won't even get into it, but he, we both know that he said he would be heated and then he'd walk away and he'd like think differently about it. But he said something about it not being personal with the media, saying he hopes the media didn't understand or would understand that it wasn't personal. The one thing that I would say is the only reason the media would think that it was personal with Blake is because Blake made it personal with members of the media time and time again. And you could speak with a number of different people in the media who worked at the time who would feel exactly that way. So, I mean, it's one of those things you could say, hey, it wasn't personal. His actions were those of someone who was going out of his way to make it personal time and time again. Anyways, that was my take on that whole thing. People want to ask more questions about that or specifics of it, and we have more time going forward in the future. It was a big, long interview, so it's hard to get into it just a couple minutes here, but I always love addressing the topic and trying to be, these are some of those things. Blake Wheeler went out of his way and Andrew Ladd to give people kind of a peek behind the curtains. We try to do that on this show as well. So if we can do more of that, you have more questions, feel free to ask them if we have time to get to them based on what happens in the shows going forward. We do know though that the next couple of shows, the Winnipeg Jets are going to be playing here, two really good teams. So they should be probably pretty big shows coming out of them. Ken, you have something to say before we go?
Yeah, just so we didn't get to it yesterday. Kevin, big moment for him becoming the first Chinese-born player to sign an entry-level deal. He's having an incredible season with the Niagara Ice Dogs as their captain, and I just wanted to get that in there quickly as well.
Yeah. Okay. That was really good and really well deserved. And boy, oh boy, talk about a player who just keeps taking it to the next level and the next level and the next level. Well deserved. Great job by Kevin He. Okay, great job by you tonight, Ken. Great job by you, chat room. We are just always so blessed when we take a look and it's 1:45 in the morning and all of you have stuck with us this long. We really do appreciate it, as we appreciate all of you who will be checking this out tomorrow morning. We understand people who can't stay up, so thank you for coming here. And if you appreciate the fact that we're willing to be here at 1:45 in the morning, talking hockey in this space. We implore you to support the people who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. And for us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Pristine Roofing, Arctic Spas, Johnston Group, TCB, TransCanada Brewing Company, and of course the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We will reconvene and do this after Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday when the Jets take on the Minnesota Wild. Talk to you then, folks. Bye-bye.